In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to edit a very simple podcast style based off an interview, a mock interview that I've done with a friend. And for this mock interview, we're going to be talking to the director of this mock movie called Splish Splash Blood, which is a horror flick that we've made up. So we're doing some kind of promotions for this film coming out. So we're going to be replicating an interview that might have been done on the red carpet at, say, the Oscars or a film awards show. And we're going to be having the interview with the director. So I have this original interview recording here, which is a .wav wave file. If you do a recording, you may have it in an MP3 or an AIFF file. Those will work fine as well. So this is what it sounds like. Here, Alana Fly, your first directorial debut. This is such an honor to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
So we've got about 2.5 minutes worth of interview here. So this is the file that we're going to use to edit. So let's open up Adobe Audition. This is the interface for Adobe Audition, and not much is happening here because we haven't actually opened up a new file. So the first step is to click File, New, and choose Multi-Track Session. You'll get a pop-up here, and this is where we'll put in the name. So I'm going to call this Podcast Interview. And one thing to change is the hertz. Depending on if you're using it for video or audio, video would use 4, 8, and 3 zeros, 48,000, and we're going to use 44,100 because we're doing just audio. So if you've recorded this on a microphone, just double check that the hertz rate you recorded in matches the settings. You want to make sure that this matches, and it will make your editing run a lot more smoothly. We'll click Browse, and I'm going to go to my podcast folder. And in here has my original file and my poster file. I'm going to create a new folder and call this Audition. I'll click Choose. So I have my name and my location, 44100, and we have stereo. I'll click OK. So this is what a multi-track session looks like. Basically, you have multiple tracks, which can be used for different pieces of your audio edit. This would be used if you were recording a band and you'd have vocals, bass, guitar, drums, that sort of thing. It means you can separate the different pieces of your audio edit, and you can change features about volume and pan and different filters without affecting everything in the recording. You'll notice because we've created this file, we have this file over here, podcastinterview.sesx. This is your editing file for Audition. So the first thing we need to do is import our original interview file. So click File, Import, and File, and then navigate to your folder with your original interview file. I'll click Open, and you can see here now that I have two files in my browser. I have my editing file and my original wave interview. If I double click on this, you'll notice that we get the waveform here. So if at any moment while working in Audition your interface changes and you have this big green waveform, that just means you've probably accidentally double clicked on one of your audio files. To get back to your edit, double click on the .sesx file, and you'll come back to your edit here. So the first thing to do is I'm going to click and drag my wave file and place it up here on the first track. You can release it at any spot where you like, it doesn't really matter, and release. So when we're at this spot, it's a good time to save the file. So click File, Save, and I recommend saving your file multiple times while working on it so you don't lose any progress. And I'll click Don't Show again and click Yes. So this is what our interview looks like up on our first track. The playhead up here is how you can navigate around on your edit. You can click and drag, or you can just click at any spot up in this sort of ruler part on the top. You can also zoom by using the plus and minus keys on your keyboard. And the further you zoom in, you'll notice that you can see actual tiny pieces in our waveform that indicate words and parts of sentences. So if at any point your interface looks weird, you may have accidentally zoomed all the way up. When you're zoomed in, you can use this crossbar on the top to navigate left and right through your edit. So sometimes you want to stay zoomed in, and this way you can navigate really easily. So audio editing is really simple because you can actually visually see where your words and sentences are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push play. I'm going to line up my blue playhead at the beginning here and push play. Listen to the speaking and where it lines up with the waveform here. Okay, we're all set for interview. You good? You got water?
Yes, thank you. I'm comfy. Thanks.
Okay, we'll start in a few seconds. You can see how the words line up with the waveform here, and then when there's no waveform peaks, that's where the silence is. To navigate around your edit quickly and easily, you can use the play, pause, stop, rewind, fast forward buttons down the bottom here, but that gets a little bit cumbersome having to go back and forward to this bass controller. So I actually recommend that you put your playhead where you'd like it to go, and then use your space key. Okay, we're all set for interview. Space key on and off. Good. You got water? can be really precise, and I recommend you keep your right hand on the mouse and your left hand can do all of these shortcut keys. So I'm just using my thumb on my left hand here.
Yes, thank you. I'm comfy. Thanks.
And another way to go fast forward and rewind is to use the keys J, K, and L. And you can hit these keys multiple times. So I'll hit the L key a few times and stagger it, and you'll watch it gets faster. And back for and space key to stop. And the same with the J key, you can go rewind. The more times you hit it consecutively, the faster it will go. So that's a quick way to navigate through your edit without actually having to go down to this controller on the bottom. Okay, so let's begin cutting up our interview. This section here at the beginning is something that we don't want. This is the interviewer and the director just kind of getting ready for the interview. So I'd like to cut this about here. So I'll put my blue playhead kind of about here. So now you can go up to your tools menu up here and click the razor blade. If you want to use a shortcut, that's R on the keyboard. And you'll notice your mouse turns into a razor blade when it hovers over an audio file. What I'd like you to pay attention to is when your razor blade disappears, that means you're on a modifying line, which will be the pan or the volume. So the only time it will cut is when you can see the razor blade icon. So I'm going to place it here and click once, and you'll notice that my one file is now cut into two. So I'll go back to my selection tool, and this tool is the shortcut V on your keyboard. This is the main used tool in the editing software. You can now click on one of these pieces and separate them like that. So that's a simple way to cut an audio piece and make it into two. And now I can click on this front and click delete. And now my piece has been deleted. So now when I move this file back over, I can put my playhead here and the interview should start at the correct spot. And back for Rotten Tomatoes reviews, my name is Tony Smark and I'm here on the red carpet at the Oscars. Okay, so we have the beginning of my interview there. If at any point you want to undo some steps that you've done, on Mac it's Command Z to go backwards, on PC it's Control Z, and you can use Command Shift and Z to go forwards. So I go back and then go forwards. You can also use Edit, and your undo and redo is up here in the menu. Okay, so we have the beginning of our interview. So what I'll do is I'm going to play this and I'm going to listen to the first piece of the interview and I will cut that as well. So I'll push play. And back for Rotten Tomatoes reviews, my name is Tony Smark and I'm here on the red carpet at the Oscars talking to the director of one of the hottest new films to come out this year. Alana Fly, your first directorial debut. This is such an honor to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
So I'd really like you to tell me about making this movie. Okay, so we can see that she says she's really happy to be here, and then the interviewer starts to ask about the movie. So this will be a spot about here where I'd like to cut this, and this will be my first question and answer. So I can use the razor blade again, and I can cut. There's another way to do this. To save you having to go up to the razor blade tool, you can still have your move tool selected. You place your playhead where you'd like it to cut. Click once on the file, and it will select. And then you use Command K or Control K. And that's a shortcut on the keyboard for doing a cut right where the blue playhead is. If at any time you're trying this and it's not working, that's because your audio file is not highlighted. You see that it's a dark green. That means it's not selected. If you click once on it, you'll get this lighter green bar up the top here, and your waveform becomes much brighter. That means your clip is selected, and now I can do Command K or Control K to cut. So we have my first question and answer. Let's move this over to here. And now I'm going to use my top playhead slider, slide this over, and let's listen for this second piece. I'll push play. So I'd really like you to tell me about making this movie, and it's called Splish Splash Blood, and it's a fantastic horror film. Can you tell me about how the idea came about?
Oh, well, I thought to myself, what do people actually like about scary movies, right? It's not the suspense, it's not how well things are done, it's the blood. Just more blood, essentially, hence the name, Splish Splash Blood.
So I heard that the budget on this film... So we have another spot here to cut, right when she finishes explaining the reason behind the movie. So I'll use my move tool, click there, and I'll go Command K or Control K to make a cut. Now if I zoom out, I'll move this rest of the interview to the right, and you see that I'm starting to get some pieces here. I have the first question and I have the second question. I'm going to go ahead and chop up all of my questions and answers just as I've been doing, and I'm going to find the spots in between each question and answer. So I'll do this in fast forward. And then we'll just double check this ending, see how that sounds. Well, thank you very much, Alana Fly, for joining me.
Thank you very much, Tony.
This has been Tony Smark with Rotten Tomatoes Reviews, and we're out. Okay, so you can see if I zoom out, we have all of our pieces from the interview. And why we've done this is it's good to go through a recording that you've done, and you can actually isolate each of the pieces that you might want to edit with. And why this is good is it means that you can actually drag different sections and put them into different spots in your timeline. So you can rearrange the interview to get a better flow, or to maybe link answers that fit a certain subject together in a group. But I'll undo that. This also means if you want to delete a certain section, you can use your Move tool, click on a piece, and delete. If you want to select multiple clips and move them together as a group, you can Command or Control click on multiples. So I'll click on this one and I'll hold my Command or Control key, and I can click on those. So now I can move these as a group. So this makes it easy to move pieces together as groups to save you having to grab a bunch of different clips and move them individually. If you also want to select a big group, you can click anywhere in the gray space, drag over, and anything that appears in that dotted window will be selected. If I had multiple clips down on other tracks, you can actually click and drag and select clips on multiple tracks and then move them at the same time. So it's really easy to move your clips around and rearrange them using the Move tool. I'll just undo back. Okay, so it's a good moment to save. This question answer here has a little bit of blank space with no audio at the beginning. Now what we could usually do is we could go over here, cut the clips, and then choose it and hit delete. But there's a much quicker way to do that. If you have your Move tool selected, you move your mouse just to the end of the clip and you'll notice that you have the red bracket here. Click and hold, and you can drag your clip left and right. And what this is doing is this is kind of re-healing the cut that you made, or taking some more time off of your edit, and you can release. Same can happen on the other end of this clip. I can bring it in like this. So now when I push play,
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy.
So I've cut too much off there. So now I can bring this back out and I'll push play again.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Still too much, so I'll bring this back out a little bit more and I'll test it.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Perfect. And listen to this one. So I'd really like you to tell me about making this move. So you can see that we could even go in further and drag the clip in like that. So I'd really like you to... So you can be as detailed as you like. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split up these questions and answers and have the interviewer, which is this first part here, have the interviewer's voice on this first track, and then have the director's voice, which is a lot quieter, down on this separate track. And that means I can change the volume of her voice without altering the interviewer's voice. So I'll go back to the beginning. So I'm going to listen to the interviewer's question and then the spot when the director starts to talk. Back for Rotten Tomatoes Reviews, my name is Tony Smark and I'm here on the red carpet at the Oscars talking to the director of one of the hottest new films to come out this year. Alana Fly, your first directorial debut. This is such an honor to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, so it's right here. I'll zoom in and I'll do my Command K. And now what I'll do is I'll use my arrow tool, which is V on the keyboard, and slide it down onto this track here. And you'll notice that Audition helps you by snapping your clips to line up with the ends of other ones. So now that I have two tracks, I'll click on this track one name here, and I'll change this to be Interviewer. And I'll click on track 2 and call this Director. So now I have my director voice on this director track. So I'm going to go through my interview here and I'm going to separate the director's answers, and I'll do that in fast forward. So there I've gone through the interview and I've spliced out the interviewer questions and the director's answers. And you'll notice I'll take us to the end here. You can watch the playhead as it plays back. Well, thank you very much, Alana Fly, for joining me.
Thank you very much, Tony.
This has been Tony Smark with Rotten Tomatoes. So you can see how the track changes, but you can't really tell by the audio. That's because I've kept everything lined up. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to check our audio meters. I'm going to put my blue playhead to the beginning here, and then I'm going to click my mixer tab up here, which will take me to the mixer view. And these actually relate to all of our different tracks. So you can see down the bottom here, we have interviewer track and director track, which if I go back, this is our interviewer and director track. So this is where you can change the volume depending on which track you want to edit. Over on the right side is your master volume. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit space to start playing it. And back for Rotten Tomatoes reviews, my name is Tony Smark, and you can see this audio meter here is giving us a visual feedback of the level of the audio. So there's a difference between what you hear in your headphones and actually the audio level of the recording. So if I take it all the way up like this, you'll notice that it goes up to the red zone. I'm here on the red carpet at the Oscars talking to the... That's way too loud, and the red is indicating that you're getting some clipping or distortion in the audio. So the level that you're looking to hit is about -12 to -6. This is the kind of sweet spot where it's not too quiet but not too loud. So I'm going to play it back and I'm going to watch where the peak kind of hits at the top here. Director of one of the hottest new films to come out this year. Alana Fly, your first directorial debut. This is such an honor to meet you. So you'll notice that the yellow remains at the highest peak. So I'm going to keep it at about that. So it's at about the middle of the -9 there. So that should be a good volume. And I'll keep playing and I'll listen to her volume on her voice.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
So that sounds like that's pretty good. Let's go to another section. Let's go for this question here. So I'd really like you to tell me about making this movie, and it's called Splish Splash Blood, and it's a fantastic horror film. Can you tell me about how the idea came about?
Oh, well, I thought to myself, what do people actually like about scary movies?
So I'm noticing that her audio is just a little bit lower than the interviewer. So if I take this back, over this side, you'll see the levels rise when the interviewer talks, and then when it's her turn as the director, you'll notice that the levels will change here. Can you tell me about how the idea came about?
Oh, well, I thought to myself...
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this slider here just to bump up her audio just a little bit.
What do people actually like about scary movies, right? It's not the suspense, it's not how well things are done.
About there, she's now a little bit higher over here. So this is what you can do if you have a recording level that's slightly different for two people speaking. So maybe the microphone might have been closer to the interviewer's mouth, or maybe she just has a quieter, softer voice than he does. So you can also see here in the waveform has much higher peaks compared to her waveform. So that's something you can do for fine-tuning your audio to get the volume to be what you'd like. But let's say there's a specific part of the interview that is kind of quiet compared to the other ones. So if I look at these two here, this one looks a little bit quieter. So what I can do is I can go in and zoom in, and instead of going to my mixer, if I change this volume here, it will change everything on this track for the duration of the interview. But what I can do is this yellow line here, this will change the volume on the piece itself without affecting anything else. So if I take it down, watch when I push play. What your budget ended up being?
It's, I don't mean to brag, but it ended up being around 2 billion, yeah.
So you can actually make this a little bit louder or quieter depending on the segment that you've cut. I'm going to make this one just a tiny bit louder. There's also a moment in here when she says "oh" at the beginning.
Oh, it's,
And I don't actually want that in my edit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag and remove that down. And now I can move this back, zoom out, and then bring the final piece together. Now I can push play. Budget ended up being?
It's,
And you notice there was a tiny bit of audio at the beginning. So let me zoom in, and I'll take this in a bit more. On what your budget ended up being?
It's,
So now it's hard to tell that there was even a piece there that I've cut out. And now you notice when I play it back, at this moment, about here, there's a click sound. Ended up being?
It's,
And that will happen. There'll be background sounds, or somebody might make a sound with their mouth. So an easy way to get rid of this is we can actually cut two parts here and remove this section. But there's another way that you can actually change the volume really quickly. So say if somebody starts to laugh, but their laugh is a lot louder than normal, you don't want to cut out the laugh completely, but you do want to take the volume down. And you want to do this gradually. So you'll notice with my move tool, as it moves over the yellow line, I get a little plus sign. You can click and hold to change the overall volume, but if you just click once, you'll get a little keyframe. And I'll put one to the right of that. And then what you need to do is you need to actually put in 4 keyframes. Now what you can do is click on the second one, take it down, click on the third one, and bring it down. And this is showing the volume pathway. So the volume will be this amount, then it will quickly go down to 0, continue at 0, and then rise back up. So you can actually do this throughout your audio clip and change the volume of different sections to suit. So now when I push play,
it's, I don't mean to brag.
And you can see that that click sound has now been removed, even though we haven't cut it out of the clip. This means you can change your audio volume level later. You're also able to change the track volume over here on the track modifier. You can click and hold on the blue number and drag left and right, and you can see that you're changing the volume of that track. You can also use the panning over here. So this will pan it from the left and right channels. So if I bring this over to the right.
What do people actually like?
And then bring it back to the left.
About scary movies, right? It's not.
So if you're listening in headphones, you'll notice that her voice went to the right side and now to the left. So this is where you can be creative. You can actually split an interview so it feels like somebody is on the left side and the right side, or you can repair the audio and take audio that's on the left side and bring it more towards the middle. And now it's a good time to save. So we have two questions at the back here. This one is talking about sequels. And everybody who loved this film is now asking, with that ending, is there going to be a sequel? And we have our answer. And the next one is about the cast. And I was blown away by the cast in your movie. So I'd like to move both of these clips, and I'm going to move these to be after the cast. I like the cast question to come first. So I can move both of these clips separately like this, but what I can do is I can actually select them both, right click, click groups, and group clips. And you'll notice it gets this little icon underneath. And so what that means is when I select one of them, they both get selected. So I can easily move both of these pieces around. I'll repeat that with this question and answer. Right click and groups. And now I have these two joined together. So this makes it really easy to move pieces around. I'll line these up. So now cast comes first. And I was blown away by the cast in your. And then next should come. Somebody who loved this film is now asking, with that ending, is there going to be a sequel? The sequels question. So feel free to arrange your interview in different ways like that. So I'm going to go through and remove all of these small gaps. And what I recommend you do while you're doing your editing is go in and play to check that all of your edits are working and there's no extra audio in there that you don't want.
Nothing.
And everybody who loved this film is now asking, with that. Well, thank you very much, Alana Fly, for joining me.
Thank you very much, Tony.
You want to make sure that your audio file is super clean and there's no accidental gaps or clips that you don't realize are still in there. So it pays to go back and check your interview totally. Let's save this again. So we have our full interview here, but I'd like to make this a little bit more colorful and detailed to make it a bit more realistic. I'm going to add in sort of a music stinger at the beginning. So let's go File, Import, and click File. And I have some files here that I've got from a royalty-free audio website. So I'm going to click on News, Epic Trailer, and Corporate Logo, and I'll bring those both in, and I'm going to see which one works better. So let's bring in Corporate Logo, and I'll drop this down here. You can see that the waveform is really high on this, so that means the volume is going to be much higher than our interview. If I push play, and back for Rotten Tomatoes, it's way too loud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down this audio here. Because I don't want to hear the interview and I just want to hear the music audio levels, what I can do is click the S button, which will mean solo on this track. And that means that any other track that isn't here will be muted and we'll only hear this one. So I'll try playing again. That sounds good. Let's bring in another one. Epic Trailer. So again, I'll click solo and turn this solo off. And I'll turn down the volume on this one and push play. Okay, and the last one is going to be news. And this one's really long. I'll hit solo and turn off that solo, and I'll take the volume down just to save my ears. Okay, so I have 3 different options for my intro. I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to move all of these files and move them to the side like that, give myself a little bit of space. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute these 2 music tracks down here and just listen to this corporate logo one and let it flow into the interview beginning. And I'll have a listen how this sounds.
And back for Rotten Tomatoes reviews, my name is
So that
Tony.
sounds pretty good, but let's listen to the second one and see how that sounds.
And back for Rotten
It's
Tomatoes.
a little bit serious, so I might delete that one. Let's have a listen to see how this bottom one sounds. Now you'll notice that I have this space at the front with no audio, so let's use the red bracket and slide that back like that, and then I'll bring my news over like this. So you can see that it's really long, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it to be about here, and I'll delete that second part, and I want this music to fade out. So when I click on the track and select it, you'll notice that you get these little squares with half dark and half light gray. If you click and hold on those and drag those to the left, you'll get the fade out line. So if I bring this all the way over like this, you'll notice that the music now fades out.
And back for Rotten Tomatoes.
That sounds really nice. If I click and hold on the fade out cube, if I bring my mouse down, you'll see that the fade out will be much more sudden. So I'll try that. And that's probably too sudden, so I'm going to bring it back up where it was, about here. Okay, so let's have a listen.
And back for Rotten Tomatoes review.
I still think that that's a little bit too serious. I won't delete this yet, just in case I do want to use it. So what I'll do is I'll click mute, and now I won't hear that until I unmute it. So I'll unmute this track, and I'm happy with this one.
And back for Rotten Tomatoes reviews.
And the timing on that works really well. Okay, so we've got our music on track 3. So let's click on track 3 and call that music intro. So now I have a beginning with the music at the start. What I'd like to do is I'll replicate that at the back. So I'll select this file and I'll go edit copy. Then I'll move my blue playhead down here and choose edit paste. And it pastes the exact same file. So now I'll zoom in and let's make this line up to be just after the interviewer stops speaking. Maybe about there. And let's test this.
Rotten Tomatoes reviews, and we're out.
Okay, that works really good. I'm happy with that. I'll save my file. And now one last thing that I'm going to add in here, because this is an awards show, I'm going to put in a fake background of crowd sort of chatter in the background to make it feel like the interview was done on the red carpet. So I'll import my file. And this again was taken from a royalty-free audio website. We have crowd chatter. And we also have, we have crowd chatter. I'm going to click open. Crowd chatter. I'm going to drag this down and I'll put this down on this track here. And I'll name this track crowd noise. Let's zoom up. And of course, I don't want this crowd noise to be starting where the music is. I'd like it to be directly underneath where the interviewer starts asking the questions. And I'll take down the volume just a little bit. And now let's have a listen.
And back for Rotten Tomatoes reviews.
You can hear that's still way too loud. I'm going to take this down a lot. Let's have a listen again.
And back for Rotten Tomatoes reviews. My name is Tony Smark, and I'm here on the red carpet at the Oscars talking to
Still a little bit too loud. Let's take it down just a smidge.
For Rotten Tomatoes reviews, my name is Tony Smark, and I'm here on the red carpet at the Oscars talking to...
And you can see that this crowd chatter file doesn't have a fade in. So let's click on the fade in box and fade it in a little bit like that. And check that again.
And back for Rotten Tomatoes reviews, my name is Tony Smark, and I'm here on the red carpet.
So if I solo this crowd chatter, you can hear how it sounds. It's nice and quiet in the background, and it might fill it out and give our interview a sense of realism, as if we were actually doing the recording on the red carpet.
Honor to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
So because this crowd chatter is kind of short, I'd like to duplicate it through the rest of my interview. So I'll go copy, and I'll put my blue playhead at the end. And to get your blue playhead to snap to the end of a clip, you can hold shift while sliding it. And I'll click paste. Now what I'd like to do is remove this fade in. And then what you can do is click and slide and drag this file over the previous cut, and you'll notice that 2 automatic crisscross fades appear. So now when I push play, when I solo this, you shouldn't hear a difference in the transition. So that's a way that you can have a background audio file kind of looping, even though it's actually faded over itself. So I'm going to repeat that for the rest of the interview. And because we have our interview finishing here, I'm going to drag the end of it, bring it back to the end of the interview so it lines up with the end of the director's sign off, and I'm going to give it a fade out as well. And I'll test how that sounds.
This has been Tony Smark with Rotten Tomatoes Reviews, and we're out.
So that's sounding really good. Let's save that again. So there we have my completed interview. I've gone through and listened to the whole interview by myself with headphones on to double check that there's no mistakes or misedits or cuts. So now we're ready to export this. So go up to File, Export, choose Multi-Track Mixdown, and choose Entire Session. In this pop-up, the first field is where we'll type in the file name. So I'll call this Final Podcast and number 1, just in case I need to do multiple renders. Click the Browse button to save it in a certain location. So we have my folder here on my desktop. Let's create a new folder called Finals. And now we'll change the file format to be MP3. I'll click Save. MP3 audio. Here is the format settings, which will be kind of the resolution of the audio file, whether it be high quality or low quality. You can click Change. And this is set at 192 kilobytes a second. Let's make this 320. This is the highest setting for the MP3, and this is going to mean it's really nice high quality. Click OK, and click OK. Audition will process, and usually it's very fast depending on the length of your audio edit. Now we can minimize Audition, go to our podcast folder, locate our Finals folder, and have a listen.
And back for Rotten Tomatoes Reviews, my name is Tony Smark, and I'm here on the red carpet at
You can check through the whole file, and I recommend listening to it real time to make sure there's no mistakes. So that seems like that's worked great. So you can see the file size here is 5.2 megabytes. If I go back to Audition, you can see that we're at 2 minutes and 10 seconds here for our interview. So 2 minutes and 10 seconds gives us about 5 megabytes. So if you had an hour-long interview, you'd notice that the megabyte file size would be much higher. So say we have a really large interview and we want to export to an MP3, but keep it a bit more like a small size. Let's go File, Export, Multi-Track Mixdown, Entire Session. And this time we're going to keep everything the same. We're going to change the name to be Final Podcast 2, and we're going to call this Small, because we're going to make this a small file size. In the format settings, click Change, and this time you can choose 96 kilobytes. So this is going to be a much less dense audio file, but it means the file size is going to be much smaller. Click OK, make sure you're set to MP3, and click OK. Now if I go back to my desktop, we have Final Podcast Small, and you'll notice that it's 1.6 megabytes. So that's actually about 1/4 the original size. And if I listen to it,
Oh, thank you so much.
It actually still sounds really good. A final thing on exporting from Audition is you can choose a certain segment to export. So say I wanted to only export the second half of this interview. I'd line up in the correct spot, and I push my I key. And you'll notice that immediately the interface looks different. This is the selected zone that Audition will render from. Move your playhead to the end of where you'd like it to be, and click O on your keyboard. So we've set the I for in point, O for out point. Now when we export, we're going to click Time Selection. And now it will only export this segment here. You could go through all of your normal settings and click OK. So that's how you can export just a small piece of your clip. So that shows you that using Adobe Audition, you can use an original interview file and some multiple sound effects and backing music to put together a very realistic audio edit.